So Vice President J.D. Vance has yet again warned that Germany is committing civilizational suicide, bringing mass migration and a multicultural appeasement strategy, particularly towards Islam and all the ensuing terror attacks, and inflicting it upon the citizens of their country and censoring them when they notice the obvious and undesirable consequences of diversity. Vice President Vance has also warned about this happening in the UK, as have I, and I went on Timcast IRL recently and explained why civil unrest is brewing in Britain. I clipped this for my channel. It's done extraordinarily well, so thank you to everyone who has shown interest in this. So I thought I would sit here and make the case to our former colony, our prosperous cousins, to my American friends who I love so much, as to why if you are interested in regime change, and you've been doing it in the Middle East to nations that hate you, toppling dictators to replace them with ISIS and the Taliban instead, if you're eyeing up your next timeshare to spread liberal democracy to, what about London? What about the UK? We would welcome you as Liberators. Now, to start off, I'd just like to draw your attention to the fact that Keir Starmer has been repeatedly lying to Donald Trump's face any time that free speech and censorship has been brought up. It was brought up by Vice President Vance in their Oval Office visit while Keir Starmer and members of his cabinet sat uncomfortably around men that they had called racist, sexist, and members of the KKK. I'm looking at you, David Lammy, for your Time magazine piece. But when J.D. Vance mentioned the UK is censoring UK citizens and using leverage against American tech companies to do it, Keir Starmer just flat out lied to Donald Trump.
With our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies. But we also know that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British, of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and by extension American citizens. So that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history.
Right, total lie. Not just because they do reach across the US, but because we don't have free speech in the UK. And this came out a couple of days ago. It was on the 31st of July, about a week. And this is a revelation by the House Judiciary Committee under Representative Jim Dorden, who does very good work on this stuff, that the Labour government last year, in the aftermath of the Southport massacres and the subsequent protests, reached out to American tech firms, while it was still in the Biden administration, of course, and asked them to censor footage of protests and also censor mentions of two-tier Keir, because the accusation got under Keir Starmer's skin ever since Elon Musk amplified it, because it strikes to the heart of the fact that the British state is taking the side of foreign criminals and jihadist groups against its own law-abiding population and making said white British people pay for the privilege of it. So this is what the Telegraph described as a secretive Whitehall spy unit. This is under the Technology Secretary Peter Kyle, the same guy that just compared Nigel Farage to Jimmy Savile, and they were flagging, quote, concerning narratives to the likes of TikTok. And the email is here. The email from the Department of Science and Technology says, "Hi, thanks very much for the update, and we will share police reports and factual cues whenever we can. We wanted to draw your trust and safety team's attention to this piece of content. It shows scrolling of a Freedom of Information request posted on this webpage here and refers to asylum seekers as undocumented fighting-age males." We saw this same accusation that this was a racist or conspiratorial narrative embedded in Dame Sarah Khan's report, actually, at the end of December last year with communist group Hope Not Hate, where she said that far-right narratives refer to asylum seekers as fighting-age males. They are. Multiple of them are sex offenders. Some of them have been caught as being Iranian spies or members of the Taliban, and so this is accurate, but the government is trying to leverage, and has been trying to leverage, American social media firms, and TikTok, obviously in hock with the Chinese Communist Party, but at least the American headquarters, to take down posts that are critical of the government and critical of their immigration and asylum policy. It says, just to flag the context, hotels for asylum seekers have already been seen targeted protests, and there are significant risks of these becoming violent. Home Office colleagues have been in touch with us about concerns surrounding this type of content. Bear in mind, the Home Office sat on 4 months until I actually helped GB News break the story. Footage of people smugglers sharing videos of girls filmed without their consent on nights out, dressed immodestly by Islamic standards, to market them as the spoils of war to prospective clients in North Africa. And this was shown alongside burning churches in France and breaking into European countries via border fences or crossing the channel in small boats. They knew that was going on for ages. It was only because a whistleblower brought the information to me and told me the Home Office knew this was going on, and it was made public, that then the Sunak and eventual Starmer government tried to work with social media firms to try and get them to take this footage down, and they have been taking it down since the 1st of April 2025. But it took over 2 years for them to act on people smuggling gangs from the Islamic world, preying upon our wives, mothers, sisters, daughters, and friends. But when it's criticism of the customers of those people smuggling gangs, oh, no, we've got to reach out to TikTok right away and make sure that American headquartered social media companies are censoring their platforms and the people on it. It says, please could this be assessed by the trust and safety team? There is a definite sense of urgency from here. This is much like the mafia going, oh, nice restaurant you have here. Would be a shame if you didn't pay your protection money and something happened to it, wouldn't it? So they are trying to strong-arm social media companies into doing their censoring for them, and they have been successful in many instances. See the Intercept expose in 2022 in October, where the Biden administration had a secret portal, along with the intelligence agencies, to take down posts that were critical of Anthony Fauci and were criticizing the Biden administration's COVID and vaccine narratives, and that's as far as I'll go with challenging that on YouTube. Then Keir Starmer showed up to Turnberry, the Trump estate in Scotland, when Trump was making his visit, and was asked multiple questions by Bev Turner of GB News, and Starmer yet again lies to Trump and says, we have free speech.
You discuss the importance of free speech today.
Well, free speech is very important. I don't know if you're referring to any place in particular. Perhaps they are, but
We've had free speech for a very, very long time here, so we're very proud about that.
I wonder if he knows, thanks to that awkward smile he gives, just that nobody believes him. Absolutely everyone hates him. And that smile actually makes it worse. He's rubbing it in our faces that 12,000 people are arrested every year, 30 people a day, for offensive social media messages. And that doesn't even count the statements made in person, the sort of Islamic blasphemy law being enforced, the brand new offences created by the Online Safety Act, which we'll be going through in a moment. So Starmer, yet again, lied to Trump when another question was asked by Bev Turner at the sit-down press conference. He says, we are not censoring anyone. That is untrue. For example, the public space protection orders placed around abortion facilities that have led to Christians praying silently in their head, being arrested and charged by the police. Isabel Vaughan Spruce being a great example. This was in February of 2025 under the Starmer government. She has been, again, harassed by police for a third time to say that standing on a street corner, potentially praying in your own head, is causing people alarm and distress. So they are more concerned with people praying for the lives of unborn children ended by the abortion industry than the ending of the lives of unborn children. Also, Christian pastors, another client of the excellent work by those at Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF International, Christian pastors attacked in the street by speaking about how the Quran describes Jesus, being attacked by a man in a Deliveroo costume, sort of just the peak of current Britain, right? Where this guy can get away with attempting to do violence against this chap just for describing the contents of his own holy text, can be afforded protection by the police. But this man, Pastor Dia Moodley, has not only been arrested here for threatening to breach the peace, but he was also arrested again. Like, in March 2024, he was arrested for affirming that sex is binary and for talking about Islam. So the police are picking and playing favourites with sexual, religious and ethnic groups and enforcing a two-tier justice system to avoid the native host majority population and even non-white Christians holding negative opinions about their particular protected groups. So yes, you are censoring people, Keir. Yes, you are arresting people. The police who are under your government's control, who are abiding by legislation and guidance that you could repeal tomorrow if you didn't like it, but no. Your Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has promised to make it worse. The 2014 hate crimes operational guidance brought in by the Metropolitan Police that created non-crime hate incidents, a kind of scarlet letter applied to anyone who says something that someone, somewhere, finds offensive, reports anonymously, is not asked for evidence because the fact that they are offended is proof of a non-crime happening, and that goes on someone's permanent record that they are not informed about, but that can prevent them from employment. Yvette Cooper has just said she wants to make those worse, more numerous, and record more of them for the prevention of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. The irony being that if you wanted to prevent anti-Semitism, you're going to have to crack down a hell of a lot on anti-Semitic beliefs by Muslims, but you couldn't do that, of course. You always got to scapegoat the British for these problems. This same chap has just been endorsed now by the White House itself. The Trump administration have stepped in because they repeatedly are concerned about the persecution of Christians. This is why J.D. Vance mentioned Adam Smith-Connor and other ADF clients in his Munich Security Conference speech. Mr. Moodley gave a comment to the Telegraph here, and he was pleased to be invited to a 5-person State Department team meeting in London in March. And he says, "We've been crying out here in the United Kingdom for quite a few years now, especially over the last year or two. Our position has been that free speech is in crisis. So when the US State Department came and they said they wanted to sit across the table from us and hear directly what we were going through, it felt like what our own government needed to do, to sit down with us and ask what is actually happening on the ground, rather than hearing our Prime Minister saying, 'Free speech has always been here,'" he added. Now, this is completely valid. The State Department care a lot more about the ancient liberties and customs that the Englishmen feel are afforded to Englishmen than our own government do. Our own government is persecuting us. They have shrouded the UK in an iron curtain of censorship that the US needs to lift in sort of Reagan-esque fashion. Now, another example of this is Hamit Yozgan. He is a victim of Britain's de facto Islamic blasphemy law. He was originally charged after burning a Quran outside the Turkish embassy, Turkish consulate in Knightsbridge, as an act of protest against Erdogan. He was originally charged with offending the institution of Islam. And the fact that a man rushed out of the building and attacked him with what looks like a knife, but the man is denying holding a knife, even though he literally slashes at Yozgan with some sort of bladed article on camera. And then he was kicked in the head by a Deliveroo driver while he was down. The Deliveroo driver, I don't believe, has been charged with anything or even identified. The fact that he did this was cited by the judge as the reason to convict him. It says here that the conduct was disorderly is no better illustrated than by the fact that it led to serious public disorder involving him being assaulted by 2 different people, neither of whom appear to have any justification for the nature of their response. The prosecution must also prove the conduct was in the presence of someone likely to be caused harm or distress. This is clearly the cause here. A man took exception to him burning his holy book, and a passing delivery rider kicked him when he was on the floor. They were likely to be Muslims in the location who would suffer harassment, alarm, or distress. So, if you upset a Muslim by disagreeing with Islam, holding their book up, or burning it in an act of protest, and they violently attacked you, possibly lethally, as almost happened to Salman Rushdie when he lost an eye, then you will be prosecuted for offending your attackers. It is the "she wore a short skirt, so she deserved it" justification, but on a civilizational scale here. And originally, Yozgan, again, was charged with, by the City of Westminster, intent to cause against the religious institution of Islam harassment, alarm, or distress. So it wasn't even against individual Muslims. It wasn't even against attackers. It was against Islam itself. So the Americans really need to step in and save persecuted Christians, and just Englishmen, and people who wish to speak and live freely, from this communist and Islamist attempt to impose censorship laws on us. Then, Keir Starmer saying, the great irony of this, saying, "We are not censoring people," is literally moments after they passed the Online Safety Act, put it into law. When this happened, because of age verification laws, free speech on X is being censored. Now, X allows pornography on its platform. It shouldn't, because users as young as 13 can access X. But this wasn't censoring that content. It was censoring speeches by members of parliament like Katie Lamb, describing the abuses suffered by the victims of the grooming gangs. It was censoring footage of protests outside asylum and illegal migrant hotels, which, of course, they tried to do with leverage being placed on social media companies late last year. And it creates a brand new offence, another speech offence. So we're already getting 12,000 arrests a year, but it now creates another offence they can charge you with. False communications offence. A person commits an offence if the person sends a message, the message conveys information the person knows to be false. At the time of sending it, the person intended the message or the information in it to cause non-trivial psychological or physical harm to a likely audience, and the person has no reasonable excuse for sending the message. A judge who has been marinated in diversity, equity, and inclusion ideology will be determining what is reasonable, what is false, whether or not the person intended to harm someone. And psychological, non-trivial psychological harm will be a matter of a person claiming offence who has an incentive to exaggerate said harm and offence to determine. So basically, if you upset someone like a Muslim for disagreeing with their religion online, you can now be charged for an extra offence under the Online Safety Act. And we already had the Malicious Communications Act, the Communications Act, the Public Order Act, various updates to the Public Order Act by Conservative and Labour governments alike to get you on the hook for a speech offence. And now the Labour government have gleefully implemented this and said, if you don't go along with it, you're basically Jimmy Savile. And one victim of this, it seems, at least he is being charged or questioned for this, is Tommy Robinson. Now again, doesn't matter what you think about Tommy Robinson. This is a high-profile example of speech persecution. And he was presented with, by the Metropolitan Police, printouts of his tweets where he says, F Palestine, F Hamas, F Islam, want to protest, F off to a Muslim country and protest. Any self-respecting Englishman should be allowed to post that. Like, I agree with that. I agree. I am totally indifferent about Palestine, just as I am totally indifferent about lots of other countries. I do think a lot of their population would wish us harm if they're brought here, and they shouldn't be brought here. F Hamas, yeah, that's a legally required opinion, actually, because Hamas are a prescribed terror organisation. It seems only the likes of the BBC don't believe that, because they get the sons of Hamas ministers to narrate their documentaries for them. F Islam, yeah, I disagree with Islam. On a moral level, I disbelieve its truth claims. I have no respect or regard for it, and like the majority of the British public, I view it negatively, according to YouGov polling. If you want to protest, go to a Muslim country that purports to care more about its fellow members of its ummah than a non-Muslim country. Stop trying to turn Britain into a Muslim country. And another post he was presented with was this, where he says, Kobe Nazrul Primary School in London's East End has been named as the first in the UK where none of the children's first language is English. The school sits in a quiet side street off the busy commercial road in Whitechapel, a district once synonymous with Jack the Ripper and the Cray twins, and home to the nation's true Cockneys. Now this. Nothing in there is a negative character judgment of any of the people in this photo. It is simply saying we should not have areas of the country that cannot speak our language. And this is apparently an item that warrants reference as an offence under the new the new Online Safety Act. And he was presented with charges from the Online Safety Act, this exact statute, 179, and also from the Communications Act of 2003, where a person is guilty of an offence if he sends, by means of public electronic communications network, a message or other matter that is grossly offensive or indecent, or obscene or menacing character, or causes such message or matter to be so sent. Again, grossly offensive or of an indecent, obscene, or menacing character is purely subjective and determined by the police or a judge. And I don't find any of these grossly offensive, but clearly some Muslim recipient, viewer, or some activist in the Metropolitan Police does, and that is enough to get him charged. So we have the government treating its own citizens as terrorists, using anti-terror software originally developed in 2017 to monitor ISIS jihadists, to now monitor protests against mass legal and illegal migration across the country. This is the National Security and Online Information Team, which was commissioned in 2017 using AI firm Faculty to search for ISIS recruitment videos, and now is being used to, with a £2.3 million contract, to develop a counter-disinformation data platform to look for migrant protests, and, as the American State Department have already commented on, prevent the supposed counter-extremism training body run by the Home Office is defining cultural nationalism, which it describes as Western culture is under threat from mass migration and a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups, as extreme right-wing terrorist ideology. Now, when I asked the State Department officials about this, they said, Western culture is not something to demonize, diminish, or apologize for. Rather, Americans and Europeans should honor our shared heritage of self-government, liberty, and the rule of law. Extremism comes not from those who respect our traditions, but from those who seek to erase them. We must continue to uphold these values and cease our efforts to censor, marginalize, or stigmatize individuals for their beliefs while rejecting all violent extremism. Unfortunately, I don't think our government is interested in that. I think they're going to keep lying to the American government and saying they aren't censoring anyone while imposing even stricter censorship measures on their reluctant population. And so, look, stop dicking about in the desert. Come over here and show some strength and ensure that our treacherous government has to abide by what its people want, which is the right to speak freely, to criticize foreign nationals and alien religions, and they must respect the democratic mandate and ensure that anyone who does not want to live and abide by our way of life must leave. We would welcome the Americans as liberators if they decided to do just that.